Baby wearing is not a new thing. People have been baby wearing for the beginning of time. But unfortunately in our culture, especially in American culture, we've really created a huge distance between us and our children through our, not just our own faults, but through our own policies. People have to go back to work, they have to leave their babies, they have to manage other things, and so and a lot of times some of the new devices that we use separate us from our babies even further, like putting them in a swing or those kinds of things, or we have to drive somewhere and so we have to put them in a car seat to be safe, and all those things separate us from our babies physically. So a lot of the times in the research literature, it really focuses on you should be playing with your baby, engaging with your baby, looking at your baby, which is great if you can do that, but it's problematic for a couple of reasons. Let's just say that even if you are getting your sleep and you're well fed and your baby is well fed, it's really unrealistic for people to be able to just spend the day looking and playing with their babies. There's other things that we need to do. And it also puts a lot of pressure on parents to feel like they have to be doing all these things with their babies. So then I thought, what if you could essentially be helping your baby form the secure attachment simply by physical touch, simply by wearing your baby? Because then that would take off so much pressure that parents already place on themselves to do all the other things that they need to do to parent effectively. Well, you know, it's really interesting. I studied child development for a number of years before I became a parent myself. And so the first time when I became a parent, I was apprehensive like most parents and took all the classes that I could to sign up for to get ready to prepare for this baby. And then we took the baby home and suddenly I was alone and I couldn't figure out how to put the baby down. And I remember the nurse calling me, and I don't even remember when it was sometime in my fog of sleep deprivation, asking me, how are things going? Wanted to see how are things going, and I was like, you know, they're not really going that well. I mean, he's fine, he's fed, but I can't put him down. And she said, you know, babies need a lot of cuddle time. And it struck me as a researcher because I knew what she was telling me in research language was what she was telling me is that what my son was trying to develop right now was a secure attachment with me. And so when babies are born, that's the first developmental task that they have. And through getting consistency and being fed when they're hungry, changed, held when they need to be held, then they're learning that they can trust another caring adult. Well, I knew because when I looked in the literature that there wasn't very much that was evidence-based, which means I wanted to be able to design a study that we would be able to make conclusions to other populations, because I want to be able to use this and have other people be able to use baby wearing as a way that helps parenting and know that there's evidence or data to support that. So when I thought about what kind of study I wanted to design, I knew that I needed to create an intervention, a randomized intervention. So gathered a population, and in this case I selected teen mothers. And the reason why I selected teen mothers is because they're at a greater risk of having difficult babies. So their babies are more likely to be born premature, their babies are fussier, they have more sleep problems, they're just more difficult to form a bond or attachment. It's hard to form a bond with your baby when your baby is really fussy and hard to soothe. So I wanted to pick that population because I thought that I could get the greatest effects with this group of moms. So I worked with 2 agencies in the community, and when I got their information, I randomly assigned them to be in my baby wearing condition, or they got a baby book set, which was my control condition. So both groups received a free baby item. Both groups were receiving education from the community agencies that they were affiliated with. So I wanted to see if this baby wearing activity would in fact help them develop a closer bond with their babies, but also improve their own health and their baby's health. And so I had all of these different carrier types, and I had them in a big bin, and I would come to their house and I would show them, demonstrate all the options, and I let them pick which carrier that they would find most comfortable. And sometimes they would try them on and see which felt the most comfortable to them that they would like to take. And it's interesting because we wrote down which carriers that they chose, and we did find some interesting differences in terms of outcomes based on what carrier type that they picked. So that's sort of, it was a surprising finding for myself. So when they were in the baby wearing condition, I asked them to wear their baby in the carrier for at least an hour a day. And I followed them, I texted them every week, and they reported to me how often they actually did. And I asked them to do this for 3 months, so from birth until 3 months, and then I followed them another 3 months after that. And I didn't ask that they keep wearing their baby, but they got to keep the carrier, and I did document how much that they ended up wearing. And so it was interesting that the mothers that selected the wrap instead of the soft structure carrier, they ended up wearing their baby for more hours in the carrier, and they ended up wearing their baby for a longer period of time. But what was really interesting is that there were big differences between these groups. So the ones that baby wore just by happenstance, they mentioned a lot that they liked to baby wear because of the convenience. So it allowed them to cook, it allowed them to take care of other children. Whereas the mothers in the intervention condition, they mentioned convenience, but the primary reason was that it helped them to bond and soothe the baby. So they were talking about it as a more effective parenting tool. And so what I really reflected on that was that they were talking, that the mothers in the control condition really were using it more of a transportation device. You know, they used it to go shopping. They used it so that they could do these other things. So maybe it didn't occur to them that it could be useful as a way to soothe their baby, the way that the moms in the intervention did, because I told them to wear it for an hour a day. So they woke up and I said, you can wear the baby then in the morning, in the afternoon, and so forth. And it also reminded me of when my mother, she came to visit me when I had my third baby, and she was helping me with him, and he was unfortunately my most challenging baby out of the three, of course. And when she was there, I wanted to run out of the house. I said, you have to wear him in this carrier when I go because he will not be happy otherwise. And so she put him in the carrier, and then every time she was looking after him, she was always wearing him in the carrier. And she reflected to me, she said, you know, I had a carrier that I used with you when you were a baby, but I never thought to use it when I was at home. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. What do you mean? And she's like, well, you know, I would use it to go to a concert or something like that. Yeah. And then it was like a light bulb moment for me when I realized that, again, it's because of the way that they're marketed. People are really thinking of them as a way to bring your baby somewhere or a way to somehow transport your baby around, not to actually help soothe your baby or soothe, even it's soothing. So a lot of moms in the study talked about it was soothing for themselves. They felt calmer when they were wrapping the baby. So I think there's a huge potential here to be able to reach more people if they can see this. It can be a really helpful, useful tool, because currently we don't really have ways of helping people to bond and attach with their baby. We have interventions geared towards postpartum depression and anxiety, although there's some issues with those as well, but we do have some things set in place. But we don't really talk about what if you're having problems bonding with your baby or attaching with your baby. What is it that we can do to help families do that? I was really interested in how it would impact overall health and well-being, both for the mother in the study, which is who I focused on, and the baby. And I found in both cases, concrete health outcomes. So the sleep quality of the mothers was better in the condition where they received the baby carrier. And they also reported that their babies had better night's sleep. When I asked them, and I just asked in the interview, how did your baby sleep last night? Just so that was most fresh in their mind. How many times did the baby wake up? Those kinds of things. And there was a significant difference between at that time, 4-month-olds of the ones that had received the baby carrier versus the ones that were in the control condition. The mothers also reported fewer gastrointestinal problems. They also reported self-report fewer difficulties bonding with their baby on the survey. I was also really interested in getting some actual behavioral assessments. So what that means is I observed them playing with their baby, and it's a specific task. It's called the still face interaction task, where the moms and babies interact together for 2 minutes. Then the mother's face goes still and she doesn't react, and then we look to see what the baby does. So, and then there's a reunification phase where then they return to normal. What we're looking for is babies that have a secure attachment will be distressed at first when their caregiver stops responding to them, and they may try to solicit their attention. You'll suddenly hear the baby start cooing or trying to grab at their mother. But then when their mother returns and plays as usual, they are able to recover from that. So that essentially extends on to later adulthood, that you want basically children to feel like they have a secure base that they can check in with, that they know that there's somebody there to tell them if something's dangerous, but they have the confidence to be able to go out and navigate the world on their own. It's kind of a myth that people think, and it's unfortunately a myth in our culture, that people believe that in order for a child to be independent, you kind of need to, let them figure out stuff on their own. Don't hold them too much. Let them, cry and self-soothe. But really what the research shows is the opposite. The more attention that you give, the more that you hold them and are there for them, they will take the initiative to when they're ready to explore and then use you as a secure base when they need to. So essentially in this task that was created, we found very significant differences. It was quite dramatic between the two groups, and you can see it in the videos, where the babies and the mothers are more engaged in the intervention group, the ones that got the baby carrier. So the babies are looking to their mother, we call it social monitoring. So they're looking to their mother for those cues to know what's going on. The mother is more positively engaged, so they're more in synchrony with one another. The mothers in the intervention condition, they're not as engaged in a positive affect. They have a more flat voice or a neutral voice. And the babies are more interested. You see them more looking at the chair or objects in the environment rather than the mother's face. And they appear to show more distress. So that recovery period that I talked about, where you want to see that the baby's able to be calmed again, the babies in the control condition were more likely to stay at a high negative affect, so crying and showing active protesting. And as far as intervention goes, it's a cheap intervention. You can just, a lot of our interventions it doesn't require a lot of counseling, weekly attention, home visits. These are the kinds of interventions that we often do that are really expensive. A baby carrier is not as expensive. A baby carrier can be very cheap. And so you can put that in the hands of someone, and that they can learn to, once they learn to use it, they're able to do it on their own. And they can use it by themselves and go out and that's a question that I always get asked, and so when I first looked at my data, I thought, no, there's not really any difference here. The intervention group and the control group are breastfeeding at the same rate. But then my student was looking at just the length of time that people baby wore, both in hours and also just if they were still wearing their baby and how long they wore their baby in terms of their baby's age. And then I found a big difference. So the people that wore their babies longer, used the carrier more, were also breastfeeding longer. So that was an interesting effect too. Well, I think, I've been very fortunate in my work environment that I was able to take my baby to work after I had my baby. And baby wearing really helped me do that, because as long as he was in my carrier, he was content, he was safe, he was happy. I was able to do my work, and frankly, nobody even around me really noticed he was there half the time. I did a lot of meetings with my baby and my baby care, and it was ironic to me because so many people would say, oh, your baby is so easy, when in reality he was my hardest baby that I had, but he was happy in the carrier. And so for me, I would love to create more policies around creating opportunities for people to be able to take their baby to work. If we're in a society where we still need to be able to work, then we should create put things in place in the work environments that allow people to bring their baby to work. If you have your baby in your carrier, it's not going to be disruptive to anybody else, and you're also helping to form a better attachment with your baby, which is for the benefit of society as a whole. So I'm going to be working with a new project. I'm going to be working with the NICU here in Tucson, And they contacted me because they're interested in incorporating baby wearing as an intervention for babies that are born substance exposed. So babies that have neonatal abstinence syndrome that reach a certain criteria of drug withdrawal, that they will be enrolled again in a similar kind of randomized design where they receive a treatment as usual, but then another group that will see treatment as usual plus a baby carrier. And I would just really love to see, it would be amazing if we could see that wearing the baby might help with reduce those withdrawal symptoms, which would mean they would need less of morphine or clonidine, which is what they give to help babies withdraw from drugs. That would be amazing if we could show or have some kind of impact in a medical setting of reducing that. I think that it's really empowering for parents to know that they don't need to do as much as we're telling them to do all the time. They don't need to sit there and be constantly speaking with their baby or engage in looking in their baby's eyes. I mean, those things are great. Those things are helpful too. But I think it's really empowering, especially for people that aren't in a position where they can, for example, breastfeed a baby, because that's a lot of what we hear about. That's the best way to bond with the baby is through breastfeeding. Well, there's a lot of parents that can't breastfeed or are adopting their baby, or fathers, other caregivers, foster families, which is something that being in social work that's been on my mind is this would be a great tool for anybody that's taking care of the babies, that they can develop a close relationship with the baby, because we put so much attention on mothers, and that's the mother's job to bond with the baby. Well, the baby doesn't distinguish that. The baby can, as long as they're getting a secure attachment from someone, that's what matters. And so that, to me, has a really powerful impact of what these baby carriers can do for families.